Hello everybody. Today we're in Phoenix Journal number 27, and this is a very important law for nowadays, and it's a bit of a longer one. And it'll be starting with commandment number 15 out of the 18 laws of God. You must obey the wisdom of God for the responsible and balanced procreation of your species. We have written about the commitment of marriage by a man and a woman to God as being one of the necessary components to also becoming a parent for God, which means procreating your species. See law number 8. You must not commit adultery. Now, the divine and sacred act which was created by God for the procreation of the species, you once call sexual union, God created this divine union to be performed between one man and one woman, specifically for maintaining the balanced level of the species for each given planetary system. Now, the fallen ones, or adversaries of godness, have completely perverted and maligned this one sacred and divine act that at one time was done with complete love and devotion to the Father within each partner, so that sex is now called a birthright to be done often, with impunity and with many partners of either sex and without consideration of love or responsible procreation. How we and the Father weep for you. This one abuse of God's creation has nearly destroyed your species. Let us quote once again from, and they called his name Emmanuel I'm Sananda, page 55, and this is journal number 2 under PhoenixArchives.com. The act of marriage and procreation must have the highest degree of pure intent and preparation, for upon these bonds and restrictions will rest the preservation of mankind as a species upon the planet. If everything is done and adhered to, justice and peace will come to all mankind, and life in the human form can be preserved. If man continues his selfish and imprudent behavior, he will sound his own death tariff. There reaches a point beyond which a planet cannot support the unbalanced system perpetrated by mankind. And yet, so shall it come to pass, read this carefully, that man will not listen and bring destruction upon his own species. And it will come about in some 2 millennium that man will have reached the point of self-destruction. This is 1991, my friends, when this was written. Have you fulfilled this prophecy of Jesus the Christ, Emmanuel, and other prophets before him? Yes, we have. And so it is projected by the prophets, and so shall it come to pass. And it is time of fulfillment, and my time of fulfillment. End of quote. Let's begin with God's directive about marriage and procreation between a man and a woman. It is very clear that this does not say a marriage and the sexual act is okay between a man and a man, or a woman and a woman, or two men and one woman, or 3 women and 1 man, or etc. Again, the laws of balance are logical, meaning they were created specifically to maintain balance within the creation. Because of the various degrees of deliberate, systematic, and malevolent, lewd, and lascivious sexual behaviors, which are the corruption of this divine union, which have been and are practiced by most of you on your plane, the warning given above by your beloved Jesus Emmanuel is transpiring before your very eyes in this time frame. The sexual act was specifically designed to be performed by one man and one woman who had committed their divine love as one in the union of marriage, ordained by God. Through this union of love, the act of sexual intercourse between a husband and his wife, procreation was a most sacred and honored responsibility, an extension of their love and commitment to God, and his service as parents of his children. Now, remember the law of cause and effect. The effects of breaking this one directive of God are all about you today. Overpopulation and the spread of fatal, venereal, and blood-borne diseases such as syphilis and AIDS are proving to be your self-punishment to the point of creating the nearly complete destruction of your human species on Earth. So let there be no misunderstanding. The following behaviors are specifically and undeniably against or contrary to the laws of God and the creation. Any homosexual sexual activity between 2 or more men is strictly forbidden. Number 2, Any homosexual sexual activity between two or more women is strictly forbidden. Number 3. Any bisexual sexual activity between two or more men and women is strictly forbidden. Keep in mind, we are specifically referring to sexual activities, not love, intimacy, sharing soul-deep closeness and specialness of the friendship, cohabitation, sharing living quarters, home together, and friendship between members of the same sex, meaning that it is the lewd, lustful, and irresponsible sexual act that is specifically and strictly against God and life. Number 4. Any anal, sodomy, sexual intercourse performed between any persons, male or female, is strictly forbidden. Number 5. Any sexual activities performed with animals, bestiality, by any human is strictly forbidden. Any sexual activity, this is number 6, any sexual activities performed by any closely related within the same family line, incest, for example, brother and sister, father and daughter, uncle and niece, aunt and nephew, cousin and cousin, mother and son, grandfather and granddaughter, is strictly forbidden. Number 7, any sexual activity performed by any male or female adult upon or with any child is strictly forbidden. Number 8, prostitution. The act of offering oneself, man or woman, to another for sexual relations in exchange for payment of same is strictly forbidden. Number 9, any sadistic or masochistic sexual practices performed by anyone or ones upon self or others is strictly forbidden. Sadistic, 1, a tendency to take a delight in being cruel. Masochistic, 1, a condition in which a sexual gratification depends largely on undergoing physical pain or humiliation. 2, an tendency to derive pleasure from one's own suffering. 10. Any voyeuristic, one who's sexually gratified by looking at sexual objects or activity, or any participation in pornography, sexual, explicit, or obscene materials, examples, movies, magazines, books, artworks, porn, and objects is strictly forbidden. Please understand that it is this preoccupation with behavior of lustful and lavish physical pleasure that you must each choose to avoid and rise above spiritually. The corruption and preoccupation with sexual thoughts, words, and actions has become hypnotizingly obsessive and also terribly degrading to the spirit of life of the one. This is not love by any definition. Can you not see this truth before you and within you? Your sexual obsession must stop if you are to reach beyond your mortal body and into the kingdom of God. Many of you, by now, are probably wondering about the act of masturbation, stimulation of sexual organs by oneself. First, reread the above paragraph. Masturbation is a self-pleasure sexual act upon self and is also what most of you couples are doing when you have sex together and call it making love. The only difference is that it is sharing mutual masturbation with your partner. Mutual masturbation is not divine sexual union for celebrating procreation. When one is an adult, it does not wish to have children. The seeking of sexual pleasure by self or with another is a transgression upon self simply because you are denying and limiting your spiritual creative potential within. The sexual desire in this time on your place of extreme sexual preoccupation begins for many youngsters at puberty. Many will have sexual release or dreams while they sleep. With the careful and loving guidance of the parents, well before and during this time, the child will not be frightened of the changes in her body, will most likely occasionally indulge in masturbation, for either curious exploration, or release of the physical body. Moderate or occasional masturbation done in privacy by either child or adult is not harmful to or against life, until it becomes an obsessive preoccupation. Also, masturbation can be a means of self-punishment, and this is most harmful to the Spirit of God within. Remember this, parents. It can also become very harmful to a child if through his training he is taught to fear or despise his genitalia, or be made to feel guilt for self-sexual exploration, or masturbation. He must learn about his personal responsibilities and must understand all the laws of God, including those governing procreation. But if you make the child feel fearful, shameful, or guilty about his own personal sexual exploration, you may actually be creating for him obsessive preoccupation with sexuality. If the child is not exposed to constant sexual stimulating media, he will quickly lose interest after initial self-exploration. If his creative potential is encouraged, nurtured, and supported by his parents and teachers, the more spiritually aware children and adults will either not have much interest in or gradually lose interest in sexual exploration of any kind. It is much healthier for the spirit of this process of becoming detached from sexual feelings is natural and by choice because of true spiritual understanding and awareness. What you once have labeled sexual energy or libido is actually a corruption of the creative and nurturing potential of the Spirit of God within you. Let us repeat this. Your sexual energy, libido, is actually a corruption of the creative and nurturing potential of the Spirit of God within you. Now, let us see how your Funk and Wagnalls dictionary defines libido. 1. Sexual desire or impulse. 2. The instinctual craving or drive behind all human activities. Did you read that clearly, friends? Instinctual cravings or drive behind all human activities. The catch is, precious ones, sex is not the instinctual craving or drive that was created by God. This was your creative, nurturing drive to know and celebrate God within you, to co-create the ever-unfolding expansion and adventure of life. The true loving divine union, that of male-female, experiencing their creative potential through the sexual act for procreation, was created to be a union of divine loving devotion and celebration of the gifts of oneness shared, and of a new life created from God. Rarely do ones feel true love, caring friendship, affection, and intimacy toward their mates on your plane. Most of you have simply forgotten what love is. You think perhaps you and your mate are one of the rare exceptions? Here's a test for you. How long would your marriage and commitment last if today you completely stopped all sexual activity with one another? Think about this carefully. Do you truly give yourself to your mate sexually or otherwise because you wish to please them? To please both of you? To please yourself? You once think your sexual orgasm is ecstasy? You even limit ecstasy. You see, you are not your desires. You are not your emotions. You are the Spirit of life of God. And your Spirit is the master over your desires and emotions. Don't you see that you simply have chosen your illusion of ignorance and confusion? To make your emotions and desires the master of your spirit, your godness. This corruption of your creative potential was created and conditioned and molded by the Antichrist. You simply bought the lie as truth and have become addicted to your desire for sex. You don't believe your sexual desire is created? Look around you today. Your advertising media, as well as your magazines, televisions, and movies, are creating your desires for you by conditioning and molding you through your false images of what is beauty, what is sex appeal. In other words, by directing your attention constantly to how you look physically, your athletic prowess, your sex appeal, attractiveness. What does and has this desire creating worked? Because the Antichrist first molds the false images and then plays upon your fear of being too unattractive, unworthy, unpopular, and simply rejected by others who you allow to judge you as a human being. The Antichrist keeps you bound by the false promise created by your desire to be worthy of life. So you are too busy trying to fit the false mold and therefore do not develop your creative spiritual potential within. How dare you feel unworthy because of the believing the nonsense of false images? Please remember this truth. You are God's temple. Advertisers are always selling their image of what you once called romance, and you are encouraged to think it means passionate sexual fulfillment. Your dictionary describes romance as 1. A love affair, 2. A kind of love between the sexes characterized by high ideals of devotion and strong ardor, 3. Adventurous, heroic, or exotic nature, romance of faraway places. When you crave romance, whether you know it or not, it does not mean sexual affair, dear ones. It means love affair. You are craving to experience within you God's love of life. You crave to feel alive. Example, warm and intense feelings, eagerness and zeal. Why? Because you are bored and spiritually unfulfilled with the self-created limits of your life. Limits which the controlled media has set up for you in the first place. You are out of balance, and you are seeking to ignite your creative potential within. Romance is the promise of adventure and joy for experiencing the spirit of life of God within you. You see, romance is not sexual adventure or a place to go. It is your desire to feel and know God within you. You can experience romance, the sharing of devoted and adventurous love of life with your mate, regardless of what your media hype tells you. Remember this: your desire for romance is your desire for change, from a limited, spiritually unfulfilling existence to recognizing and experiencing your unlimited creative spiritual potential within. The next time you have a sexual urge, look around you. What have you been watching, reading, or participating in, which created this desire? Men, when you see a physically beautiful woman, is your first thought admiration and appreciation of this gift of loveliness? And do you wonder about the loveliness and beauty of her spirit? Or, instead, do you first wonder about the pleasure you would receive if you had sexual union with her? And the same holds true for you women who call yourselves liberated, which usually first means sexually liberated and same equal rights as men to have many casual sexual encounters. Recognize that this sexual urge is really your unfulfilled creative potential screaming to be released from the self-imposed limit or boundary of the physical sexual act. Act 1. To play the part of, impersonate. 2. To serve temporary or as a substitute, to pretend. The sexual act is limiting, substituting, and impersonating your creative and spiritual unfoldment to know God. When you truly understand and recognize this truth, your creative spiritual unfoldment can no longer be frustrated and limited to the repetition of silly and truly spiritually unfulfilling sexual acts. Does this mean you are expected by self and God to stop all sexual activity now? Only if it's your choice, made with the joy of truly understanding and thus having the freedom of detachment from this addiction, and no desire to procreate. For most of you, especially adults, sexual behavior has now become addictive, so you must treat it as such. Remove as much of the temptation from your presence as possible, just as the alcoholic must remove himself from bars and must remove the alcohol from his home. Be gentle with self. Carefully abide by the list of 10 items above, which are strictly forbidden sexual behaviors, including adultery. If you are single or married and have addiction to the sexual act, use occasional masturbation as the lesser of evils if you must. If you are happily married and both have enjoyed your addiction to the monogamous mutual masturbation of sexual act, both partners will need to become detached for the addiction to be gone. So be gentle with self and your mate. But be aware and responsible to consequences such as pregnancy and persistence in your goal to self, to release and detach from all things of physical manifestation. Simply recognize without punishing self with guilt and shame that this is a transgression against the creative spirit of life within you. For a time, accept that you will have a desire because you are addicted. And many of you understand it as an extension of your love. Do not punish self or other. Let the desire dissolve naturally within each partner. As you begin the unfoldment and adventure of discovering your creative spiritual potential, you'll be surprised because at some point you'll find that the sexual act is no longer appealing to either of you. You'll be detached and no longer have interest in it. That's the end of law number 15.